Hello, you are listening to ESC. No, not an extremely saddened occasion, though this actually is one. Occasion starts with an O, but there's two C's, I'll get away with it. No, you're listening to the Extreme Scrutiny Club, where once every now and again, as fortnights are out of the window, we take a robot each, we bring it to the table, and we argue about whether that robot deserves to go into the arena in the sky and be immortalized forevermore, or we put it in this hole in the ground that appears to have fire in it. I am one of your many hosts, Reira, also known as the Empress. Who else do I have joining me today?
You have, again, Oliver, the Dark Knight.
And you have me. I'm Mitch. I am Neil.
And this episode comes with, as mentioned by the sad occasion, somewhat of a somber note, actually. So, Mitch, I
Hello.
hear you're leaving us.
Yes.
So, for those not in the know, since the very beginning of ESC, we have been a trio of hosts. We have been myself, Reira, who has been sort of providing the less serious side of all debates. We've had Oliver, our Dork Knight, who has been providing seriousness and note taking to a wonderful degree. And
Puns.
we've had our ace in the hole of pure randomness and shouting that has been our wonderful Orc, who's also been our editor, who has been our sound and video design, who has done all of our wonderful logos, and honestly has been a driving force for this podcast. And unfortunately for us, but fortunately for himself, because he's escaping this madness, Mitch has decided to part ways amicably. Do not worry, we're not suing him or anything. Not that he knows of yet, anyway.
Oh shit.
But yeah, Mitch, I feel like you should sort of say your bit, and this is a podcast for you. So what are we debating?
As Oliver quoted, that's not the right word. That's another thing you'll miss, me getting my words wrong. As Oliver said, it's in recognition of my service because I am a great serviceman, venerable veterans to commemorate robots that have been long runners in the sport, and we're just going to talk about three of those today.
Yeah, to go alongside Mitch's commendable service, his esteemed commendable service, we're going to talk about robots that also share that honour.
So we're each going to bring a series of robots for once to the table and talk about their great moments, their terrible moments, and along the way, as a trio, no guests this week, reminisce with Mitch about all of the wonderful times we've had on this podcast and sort of give Mitch a true 21 gun salute goodbye as we, assemble 21 double jeopardies and have them all fire a cylindrical ball into the sky.
I was going to say, I hope not shooting at me because that would hurt.
I mean, just don't stand in the way.
Well, orcs aren't particularly clever in that regard. It might go, ooh, what's that thing? Oh no, I've been shot 21 times.
Ladies and gentlemen, the real reason why Mitch is leaving the podcast.
Yes, I've been critically injured by 21 double jeopardies. It's not a pleasant experience.
This is really sad, and I'm trying to not let it get to me.
It's sad, but it's not, like I said, I'm not, out the picture completely. I'm still here. I'm still helping. I'm still
Yeah.
doing stuff. I'm still making war machines to conquer the earth. Wait, no, no, that's wrong. You didn't hear that. Absolutely not. I said nothing to do with secret plans to conquer the earth. Not at all.
So, we should probably get on to our first robot. We should probably, I say robots. And I feel like we should let Mitch go last, as Mitch is probably very excited about the series of robots he's brought, as it's maybe his favourite.
I wonder what it could be. I don't know.
So, I will happily take up the challenge of going first. As we're going back to, at the moment, at least for this episode, going back to the format of just the three of us, Oliver, maybe you should take up your old task as time person.
I am more than happy to do that, and I am ready to go. You have 3 minutes on the clock. Are you
Talk
ready?
of time. The talk of time. Oh, ready as I'll ever be, Cap.
All right, time starts now.
So, I have brought along the King Bee, King Buxton series of robots. They have been a true venerable powerhouse that has been with us since season 2 of Robot Wars, only really skipping out on season 6 and Extreme 2. And then, of course, after that, hitting season 8, but not staying around for season 9 or 10. It is still going today. Huge point in my part, the fact that out of all 3 of our teams, maybe spoiling a little bit for Oliver's and Mitch's, mine is the only one still going. It is a 4-wheel drive box with a pair of sort of spiked lifters at the front. It is iconically blue and orange, although it did have its silver phase, but I'm sure we'll get into that in the full discussion. And it's known for this sort of reliability, speed, and sort of electronical engineering. And also, team captain and owner of the bot, Simon Harrison, is, a great supporter of the podcast as well. He pushed us to do the Robo Nerd special and is sort of a champion of the community in a way, especially for older bots. I feel like without King Buxton, you wouldn't have had as many bots going forward that are able to take a more lean and cut down design. I feel it's somewhat honed that in. And I feel that its focus on the sort of reliability and speed over weapon power is something to be remarked at. I would be happy to open it up at this point.
You've had just over half your time. You've got way more time if you want it.
Sure. Okay. Well, King B has gone by a few names, including King B Powerworks, King B3, and King B20. It is a icon of Robot Wars. Has also competed many live events in the UK and in Ireland, I believe now as well. Although that was apparently not a fun experience for poor Simon Harrison and his team. And it's again, like I mentioned, there's this sort of beauty to the simplicity of its design. I'm not usually a fan of a simple design. I really love my bots to have a real flair and color, but I feel that King B's flair comes from that simplicity. And I feel that box on wheels with pointy bits, although described sounds, not exactly exciting, this bot is exciting to watch in the box. I again offer the possibility to throw it out.
All right. Well, you had about 10 seconds left, so let's take it up from there. Before we go any further, I do want to pick you up on one little comment you just made there.
Why?
King Buxton is known for its electrical engineering, or words to that effect.
I didn't say
My
it was
mind immediately flashes to that time in Extreme 1 where it lost control and drove around the arena. Now, as a Behemoth fan, I am more than well acquainted with how painful that is. But I just wanted to pick up on that one point.
I didn't say it was known for good electrical engineering.
That's fair, you did not, but you were listing it in among its qualities.
Yes, I was. And I stand by it as well, actually. King Buxton has a lot of electrical know-how behind it from both Simon and the rest of his team. And especially in season 8, you get to see some of that sort of neatness in design. It's well engineered. That's the word I've been trying to find. It's an engineered robot.
I mean, I've got to completely agree. The engineering on the bot is really well thought out. The thing that I love most about King B is the fact that it was designed in Series 2 after watching Series 1. Simon Harrison thought, right, okay, what's going to be the thing to win the next series? It's going to be a box with lifting spikes. What wins the next series?
A box
just
with
so
lifting
happens
spikes?
to be a box with lifting spikes. Sadly, not the box with lifting spikes that he built, but he was so on the right track that season 2 series 2 should easily have been King Buxton's series.
And I mean, it performed okay in season 2.
Oh, it really did.
I wouldn't shake a waggly stick at how it did in season 2. I just feel that it's had better performances since.
Going out to the reigning champion is nothing
exactly
to be ashamed of.
If I turn up to BattleBots and lose to Bite Force or Tombstone, I'm not going to feel all that bad because you kind of have to expect it.
Especially, let's point out, in its rookie season.
Yeah, exactly. Mitch, what do you think? King B, talk to me.
I have to be honest and say, it's testament to how things have changed when, at that point in time, the champion was basically a wedge with a circular saw on the back, whereas nowadays you've got bloody massive vertical spinners and flippers, and God, they are terrifying. But
what are you talking about? King B is a vertical spinner.
It did at one point have a vertical spinner, Mitch.
It was a 4-wheel drive vert. Everyone's favourite.
distant anger.
Yes, I feel that distant anger at the minute. But to be fair to King B, it's a robot that has had so many memorable moments in all of its different forms. Its Series 2 run was probably, and it might be a bit controversial, it was probably the best it could do. Like, it could have won Series 2, but I think beyond that, considering what we got, I don't think it would have repeated that performance. But to be fair, it finished in the top third of both gauntlets and both trials it took part in. It was number one in the semi-final gauntlet. It had its rivalry with Robodoc, or 101 as it was later known in the
Yeah.
series.
That's iconic. Its rivalry with 101 is iconic to that bot. I think 101 and King B have been defined somewhat by that rivalry, and I love that.
And we were lucky enough to witness the culmination of that rivalry.
I feel like it may need to be redone again.
Yeah.
Fight forever. Fight forever.
I mean, let's hope that RoboNerd 2020 goes ahead and we can see that fight take place again with an upgraded King Beetle.
And an upgraded 10.1.
Whenever I see King BTL, I just keep thinking of the acronym Better Than Life from Red Dwarf. Yet again, we're bringing up that show.
Also, so having a quick scroll through the wiki, I want to throw a fact out here to you because it's caught my eye for a very specific reason. So King Buxton was one of the 5 seeds for the 4th Wars that reached the Heat final of the 3rd Wars, but fell in the second rounds of the Heat in this series. It shares that statistic with Dreadnought, Agrobot, Berserk 2, and Napalm!
For fuck's sake. Oh dear. I think honestly, like, I like King B as a design. I mean, like I said, it's had a career full of moments. Like I said, it had the Great Series 2 run, lost to a champion, the 101 rivalry, going berserk and spinning round in circles because that was amazing.
That was a moment.
It was a moment. But the thing is, King B has always, I think, honestly, lost to really good robots. Like, it lost to Roadblock,
Oh, yeah.
101, Atomic in its debut year, which wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst thing going in Series 4.
The list of teams it lost to in Season 8, like Dantom Kia, Big Nipper, and TR2, all of which are iconic robots in their own right.
And then also there was Dominator 2 and IG-88, which was basically Vader,
Yeah.
but with a bar. So, you know, it's nothing to be sniffed at, and it is a very simple design compared to a lot of the other robots in this day and age, but I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, simplicity is often the best thing you can do. If you have the know-how and if you know what you're doing with a complicated design, it works, or it can work, unless it breaks down, like Razor. But
is it mad at the fact that throughout, from Season 2 of Robot Wars to still fighting in 2020, its design has barely changed? Tell me one other design that's lasted that long.
Behemoth.
That's the only one I can really think
Yeah.
of. Yeah, Behemoth.
But Behemoth has had some massive
Razor
design
when it
changes
was
too.
still running up until 2016, but
yeah, but both Behemoth and King B are both still fighting.
It's true.
And both still fighting with vastly the same design.
I would say though that King B has had more of a commitment to its original design than Behemoth has. Behemoth, although its overall silhouette has stayed the same throughout the years, at the end of the day, it's become spinner killing pneumatic flipper, whereas King B has stayed as an electric lifter. It's not had
always been that same.
It's not had any reason to change with the times.
Exactly.
Simon Harrison's commitment to this design is really commendable. In a world of Toro Maximus, which it fought at Robo Games, and your Dantom Kias and your modern day weapons. The fact that somebody's still out there making this design work and building whole new versions to celebrate the robot's 20th anniversary. 20 years.
Yeah, again, I point out 20 years is largely the main design, same design.
It is insane. I think, King B and Behemoth, they're still going. There's probably another robot or two that we're forgetting that, are still going and haven't really changed that much. The fact that they're still going, they're basically like grandparents for sport at this point, the granddaddies. And it's weird to think that because, back when we were growing up and watching the classic series, granddaddies at that point, I guess you could say things like Hypnodisc, Chaos 2, Smidsy had competed for a long time,
Don't forget Iron Ore.
That's true. Oh, yeah, there's another one. Iron Ore.
The
But,
fact
yeah.
the fact that this robot has fought the old guard of crazy amazing robots, Chaos 2 and Hypnodisc and, Razor, but it's also fought the new guard of like highly regarded robots in quote unquote Minotaur with Tora Maximus and, Dantom Kia and TR2.
I do want to just point out that,
yeah.
its Series 8 performance was not the greatest. It
It
really
wasn't,
didn't
no,
show
like
what that
Bill
design was capable of, but
still held its
I
own.
I seem to remember an interview with Simon Harrison. It was either on the Robocast or on Jim Jamatic's channel years and years back. And I believe Simon said that the King Bee that entered the 2016 Robot Wars reboot was basically one that had been sitting under his workbench for years as a new project that he'd get to eventually but never really finished. May even have been built for one of the classic series. It, like a lot of robots in Series 8, but coincidentally, as far as I can tell, none of the robots that it fought in its heat. It was basically a holdover from the previous Robot Wars. It was,
Yeah.
a 10-year-old design. Being brought back. Well, obviously the design's much older, but the bot itself was about 10 years old, being brought back. The fact that NiCad batteries were still being run in Series 8 boggles the mind when Ellis was there running brushless.
Yeah, I do want to point out as well something very interesting in the fact that out of the sort of major icons from the old series that sort of were still there in season 8, so I want to talk about people like Behemoth, Razor, Dantom Kia, and King Bee here. King Bee did pretty well compared, I say compared to the other three. The other three also did okay, apart from maybe Razor that didn't have a fantastic showing. But it just stands its ground. And if we're talking about, veterans on this podcast, on this episode, then I don't think you can look any further than King Bee.
I would like to point one last thing out as well. I've just found this on the webpage, and it's King Buxton from the original series actually was one of the 4 robots to hold a positive win-loss record before it lost it in the reboot. It held this alongside Tough as Nails, Supernova, and I'm surprised to say this because I didn't expect this one, Deertor.
Yeah.
Deertor held a positive record? What?
I was
What?
actually going to point out this exact thing, that it didn't do so well in the reboot and it actually lost its positive win record, but the fact that going into the reboot it had a positive win-loss record tells you quite a bit.
I suppose it only takes one fight to be knocked out, but to get to that one fight, you could have won 3 or 4 fights. Sure,
I mean, considering its win-loss record was, hang on, I'll find it, 11 wins and 12 losses. That's how close it was.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's considering the 3 losses that it had and 1 win in Series 8. So a little bit of mental maths turns out that, it was still fairly close prior to going into Series 8, but the way that it's just a fact that the way that the format worked. If it had entered, say, Series 10, chances are it may not have lost that record.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have much more to say about this robot. We've covered most of the main points. I don't think there are too many iconic individual fights.
It had a cameo in space, which is pretty cool, and I didn't actually know. I didn't realize that was King Bee.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's just, to quote Simon Harrison himself, nothing comes close.
See what you're quoting.
Yeah,
you know what? I'm happy to go to those.
Sure. Okay, so I am going to very comfortably put in a vote for the arena.
I am also going to put in a vote straight for the arena. The robot's got a lot of pedigree, and if this robot was no longer competing, and by the time of sort of Series 6, Series 7 had petered out, I'd say, we could perhaps criticize it a little bit more, but the commitment to this design, making it work, to it being so reliable and
It's still going today.
Yeah, and still with new versions in different weight classes, this thing is a legend and it deserves the arena.
Yep, I can't really say anything else. It goes to the arena, 3-0.
3-0. All right, I feel good about that. I feel good for getting a 3-0 victory there.
There you go.
So,
I guess that
Oliver,
means I'm next.
It does.
Does somebody else want to do my time?
I'm more than happy to do your time. Let's get 2 minutes on deck clock. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. You only get 2.
You only get 2 minutes.
What is this?
We make the rules up as we go along. You know that.
This is Mutiny.
Wait, I thought I was one staging a mutiny.
All right, are you ready to go?
I mean, would you like me to introduce my robot?
Sure. I mean, I introduced mine, as I was going into the 3 minutes. But
All
I also...
right, okay. All right, okay. Here we go then. Bring it on.
And go.
My robot goes by many names, if I can say them. Nightmare, Spirit of Nightmare, Raging Reality, and Raging Nightmare. Long-time viewers of this show may be thinking, oh, he's bought a medieval-themed robot. Of course, he wants to bring that to take it to the arena. You would be wrong. I do like the design. I do like the quirky little soldier that they keep putting on the top of all their robots. But I just want to say that Nightmare is one of those designs with a lot of promise that slowly went downhill. And by the end of its Series 7 run, although it had a pretty good run in Series 7, I think it was largely due to chance. And yeah, I think this is the flip side of having a long-running veteran in the show, is that it's kind of damaged its pedigree over time. And I think by the time you reach Series 7, it's got a very narrow, poorly optimized flipper that can lift just about as high as the Robot Wars arena wall to get things out, and it sort of becomes everything I dislike about Brit flippers in the non-televised era, in the live events era, where they're just sort of throwing things around, and it's not too exciting to watch. We could go into a deep dive of this robot and all of its wins and losses, but I'll save most of that for the debate section. Really, just to say that I think in Series 4 they had something good, but with the upping of the weight limit going into Extreme, I could forgive the fact that it's basically the same robot, apart from the fact that it's a complete rebuild with a few added weapons rather than an iteration and building on the flaws of the previous design. And the fact that it failed to qualify for Series 5 when robots like Immortalis and Juggernaut 2 made it in says a lot about pedigree of that initial rebuild. And going forward, I don't think that they ever recaptured the potential that they had in the first series. How am I doing for time?
25 seconds.
I will open it up to debate then. Guys,
Alrighty.
what redeeming features can you find in this series of robots? Because I'm sure there are some.
Okay.
I've actually realised something. I've got all 3 pages open on the wiki. We were wrong. It didn't compete in 2 Annihilators. This series of robot competed in 3.
Oh, okay.
So I'd like to say that Spirit Nightmare competed in the Extreme 1 Annihilator, which was that was a clusterfuck, to be honest with you. Lots of robots that were meant to be in that Annihilator actually pulled out. I think Atomic and Bulldog Breed were meant to be in that Annihilator, but because Hypnotist got there first, yeah, they had to pull out because of a damaged Series 5 Hypnotist did to them. Then Raging Reality was in the Extreme Series 2 Annihilator, and Raging Nightmare was in the Series 7 Annihilator. I don't think any other robot has been in 3 Annihilators. I might be wrong, so please correct me, but
I mean, my initial thought would be Can Opener, because they've done a good few.
Can Opener...
Yeah.
Let me check this quickly. You two carry on. I'm gonna do my research.
Reira, what do you think?
Do you know, I think this robot has actually been one of those sort of forgettable mid-card robots that, and I think that's kind of harsh because, again, like I always say on this podcast, I love all robots. Like, it's very difficult for me to dislike a robot truly, but really, if I had to be critical, this is one of those robots that you'd see on the heat card and you'd be like, well, that's not making it to the final. You'd just know that, and you'd look at it and just know that, and I feel sorry for that because it's not a bad design. Like, you can't look at it and go, this is poorly designed, but you also can't give it credit for being super imaginative. I mean, given that actually, to give them credit, Raging Reality was a very different shape of flipper. I just don't think that worked out how they wanted it to, really.
See, this is the thing. It failed to qualify for Series 5, so they come back with a brand new
Yeah.
design, and it just doesn't excite me.
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot that the fact that their Series 7 run, which, we on the face of it looks to be fairly commendable, was mostly won by luck and chance. They
Yeah.
beat Spawn Again purely because Spawn Again's flipper broke. But that was one of the most impressive versions of Spawn Again. And if that
Yeah.
robot had been up and running properly,
I will
I
talk
don't think they would
about
have stood a chance.
as Annihilators are sort of a talking point for this robot. I will say this actually fought in probably my favorite Annihilator of all time, being the one in season 5. That was Spirit of Nightmare, if I'm thinking
You mean
correctly.
I think you mean the Extreme one? It didn't fight in Series 5. It failed to qualify.
Yeah, I believe that's the one.
Yes. The one that had napalm in it.
Yes, that's Extreme.
Extreme 1. Sure, cool. Welcome to
Same time.
ESC. Welcome to ESC. We get our facts right sometimes. But yeah, the Extreme 1, because I absolutely love that Annihilator. As much as it does, as much as Napalm goes out slightly early, it's a real tour of force for Panic Attack, and it's really fun to watch. And Steel Avenger, actually. Like, Steel Avenger and Panic Attack get to do some really cool stuff in that.
Disco Inferno as well. Disco Inferno
Yeah.
cleaned house in that Annihilator.
But you
There
see,
was-
you bring up Steel Avenger, you bring up Panic Attack, you bring up Disco Inferno. But despite the fact that Spirit of Nightmare made it to the final of that Annihilator, you don't really remember much of what it did.
No.
And I
It got under Napalm at one point. It didn't
Which
do
is
much to it.
more than
but-
you can say for most of the robots fights. I think the thing that pains me most about Spirit of Nightmare was the fact that it was a complete rebuild to make the most of the increased weight limit. So what they did is they built an identical robot with slightly lower ground clearance at the front and some spinny bits on the side and some bum axes. They
It was
didn't.
literally-
We
They
do not
didn't
diss
try
bum
and.
axes. This
They
is a
didn't.
bum axe positive podcast.
I mean, nothing wrong with bum axes, but they could have used the weight to
Do something
build
different.
on. Yeah, the fact that Firestorm is a very, very successful ongoing front hinge flipper.
I have
They-
to defend the fact that a lot of the time a full rebuild will not mean a full redesign. And I know that a lot of people expect that, but speaking from experience from Team Nelly, the robot that we're entering into Season 5 of BattleBots, sure, there has been a lot of redesign, but visually that might not be different. I'm wondering whether there was a lot of difference in the inside of Spirit of Nightmare compared to previous models. And I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt there, especially as that was sort of the crux of experimental side of Robot Wars. Those seasons around that time were the sort of very experimental years where, there was a million different things you could put into your robot. And of course, nowadays, it is very much a you will buy the best parts because they're the best parts.
I somewhat agree, but the fact
Sure.
that it was equipped with extra weaponry and that the flipper was stated as being only able to lift 80 kilograms. I mean, it was able to flip
It
Steel
flipped Steel
Avenger,
Avenger.
so
How
that
much,
clearly
how
isn't
much did
quite.
Steel Avenger weigh at that time?
Good question.
I'll check.
But
Thank you, Mitch.
You're welcome.
here's the given that the flipper didn't quite have the punch that it needed, whether or not it was able to flip over Steel Avenger,
Yeah. I will also point out that it flipped Steel Avenger, but it wasn't the fact that it flipped Steel Avenger that knocked out Steel Avenger. It is, again, that whole thing of this sort of nightmare robot curse of other robots just stopping working, because
Yeah.
Steel Avenger had Shremex.
it did.
It had
It was
Shremex that
100
would have...
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mitch, sorry.
I was going to say it's 100 kilograms, so it was at the weight limit.
And, that's all I can say, just
Okay.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I take your point on the fact that there could have been more internal redesigns, and I was going to give this robot the benefit of the doubt because I thought it might be the same as Nightmare, and I know there wasn't much time between Extreme Series 4 and Extreme, but the fact that they decided to do a full rebuild, they invested the time in putting in the extra weaponry, I think is where this one went wrong. And like I say, by the time they focused on the flipper, the design they went with for the flipper shape was poorly optimized for getting under robots, especially for fighting spinners.
It was a fine shaped wedge for the time. I feel that the flipper was a bit subpar. I feel like it was a very small flipper for such a big wedge. With that design, you feel like there is a possibility, and though not a high possibility in those days, sure, but there is a possibility of someone riding up your wedge further than your flipper is, and you never want that.
Because I look at especially sort of the angled wedge of Raging Nightmare and think it looks fairly competent. But like I said in my opening statement, it really could only flip about as high as the Robot Wars arena wall, and I think that's kind of that's what the downfall of a flipper is
Yeah.
where it does enough to be competitive, but not enough to be entertaining. People really
Yeah.
enjoy Hydra,
Harsh
Apollo,
but true.
where
Harsh but
these
true.
robots can launch their opponents right into the ceiling. This is not one of those robots, despite the fact that it could have had the potential to be one.
Danton Kia when it first came on the scene. Like I strictly remember when I was a kid watching Danton Kia first come on the screen and just going, this is better than Chaos 2 because it's more entertaining.
Yeah.
Mitch, how do you
Hello.
feel about the Nightmare series?
Right.
They do have faces.
Okay, I've got to be honest, and it's not one I like. Okay, the face is probably, in my opinion, the most memorable thing about this robot to me because I forget this robot or series of robots exists. I will
Oof,
just say,
yeah.
looked up, Can Openers only competed in 2 Annihilators, so the Nightmare
Fair enough.
series has actually competed more than Can Opener. Fun fact.
Yeah, fair.
And with less success.
Yep.
Yeah. So let me go through these robots like one by one. Nightmare is a weird one because it was an interesting design, but its only real kind of standing point in the heat was against Plunderbird, and even then that was a bit of a it flipped it. Okay, well done.
It was mostly the house robots that did the damage.
Yeah, Spawn of Scudder fucking yeeted Banshee with that spike, which was astonishing. I forgot all about that when I was rewatching the fight earlier, and then Spawn of Scudder knocked it over. And then
Do I hear talk of your wife, Mitch?
yes. Wait, no, not my wife. What are you on about? It's not my beautiful wife. She had a nasty head injury. She'll be very well soon, I hope. She's still not recovered. It's a very hard thing to talk about. The Annihilator was, without a doubt, that second Annihilator in Extreme was probably the most bizarre Annihilator we've ever had. Like I said,
Yeah.
Atomic and Bulldog Breed were taken out by Hypnodisc because Series 5 was happening at the same time. They had to
Yeah.
be replaced. I
That
believe,
must have been fun.
yeah, it's like Bulldog Breed was replaced by Spirit Nightmare, sorry. And then fucking Atomic was replaced by Fighting Talk, which, in that sense, it couldn't even use Fighting Talk, so they used Hippopotamus. And
They
Hippopotamus was
did.
terrible.
And Hippopotamus was terrible.
And then that whole Annihilator was, let's see
I
how
was
long we survive
so
against Disco Inferno.
confused. I was so confused when they were like, and this is fighting talk. And I was like, this is not fighting talk. What?
I think
They are
it's
the same robot, just
same
with
same
different
robot, but
shells.
different. Yeah, different shells. But that Annihilator was literally what breaks first, Disco Inferno or the rest of the robots. And as it turned out, for once in its life, Disco Inferno survived the longest. Hippopotamus was ripped apart. I'm gonna call it that because that's the fucking shell it was. I'm gonna class it as that, even though it's called Fighting Talk. I don't like that robot. And then Napalm pulled out. Wait, no, sorry. Wait, who pulled out? It
Napalm
was...
did pull out
Oh,
from
it was
damage, but
Napalm.
so did Panic Attack.
Yeah, Napalm pulled out. Then Steel Avenger
They
got
pulled out, and
eliminated.
that's why we didn't get a successor.
Should
I am
find
so
out.
sorry.
You should
You'll
be.
get.
That is,
I mean, like as revealed on another recent podcast I've done, Napalm 3 is in the works. It will be a featherweight, but I am working on a Napalm 3.
I'm happy to hear this.
It's an interesting take on the design, but vaguely it will have the same shadow, but the butt axes are being replaced by a much more powerful weapon, but still on the same thing.
I am intrigued. I can't wait for this.
Yeah,
So,
something drum spinner.
oh fuck's sake. So
As
yeah,
long as the armor still flexes in the wind, we'll be happy.
yeah,
Fuck
absolutely.
you.
So the only thing was with that Annihilator, yes, Spirit of Nightmare got to the final, but I honestly feel like with how the other robots were damaged. I mean, okay, Hippopotamus was not very good. Napalm, no, was taking over damage.
You choose your words wisely here, Mitch. This may be your last podcast.
But then, the fact that Panic Attack even pulled out, it's like, yeah, sorry, we can't do this. It's like, oh shit. And then Spirit Nightmare was all that was left, and poor them. I do feel for them because fucking Disco Inferno made sure they paid the price for it. And then, you got Raging Reality, which I've got to be honest, both of the flipper robots. I mean, they're all flippers, but Raging Reality and Raging Nightmare, I forget they existed. Like, I didn't even click that Raging Reality was part of the line. I just like, oh, Raging Nightmare, that's cool. And then I find out there was one before it. I'm like, oh, that was a thing,
It was indeed a thing.
The only positive thing I can say about all these robots is that they all had positive win records. And that's all I can say. It's a very forgettable robot, and it kind of hurts me to say that because it is mid-card and it did have mixed success,
Yeah.
but it's just bleh. That's all it is.
I would argue that a lot of its success, especially in the main competition, was not due to anything that the robot did other than survive.
I feel it. Yeah, do you know what? That's exactly the words I've been trying to find. This isn't a bot that wins; it's a bot that survives. It outlives its opponent. That's no way to win a fight.
Yeah, I initially thought about the Series 7 version of this robot, of Raging Nightmare, and thought, oh yeah, that's a pretty cool looking robot. And I remember the Knight
Yeah.
and I thought, oh yeah, it's got a fairly positive win record. I'll look into this one again.
You must have had great fun
Oh, I did have great fun.
descending down the staircase of madness.
And yeah, on the surface, you think back and think, oh yeah, that was a robot that did okay.
Yeah.
But when you look into it, because you don't really remember much about this one, when you do look into it, I don't think there's much redeemable here. I'm ready to vote.
I'm ready to vote.
I will give one more point before I go to the vote. There is
Go
an iconic match that I actually really loved of Raging Nightmares. Really, really good fight to watch. And that was its fight with Trouble and Strife. Or Revenge of Trouble and Strife, sorry.
I'll give you that. That's probably its best one.
It was a very entertaining fight. Like, I genuinely enjoyed watching it. And as much as, again, we point that sort of finger of this bot being just deliciously mild, it's just so there. It's not a bad bot. It's it's not a great bot. It's there.
To quote a YouTuber I like, it's what we call an okay then detail. Okay then.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, to be
100%.
honest, that's almost the worst place you want your bot.
Yeah.
If you've got a bot that's really good at achieving and really thrills in that way, or it looks really great, then you've got a case for something interesting. If you've got a bot that flops so hard that it's memorable, then again,
I feel personally attacked.
it's something interesting. It's something memorable. This robot wasn't particularly mid-card because of anything it did. It was just mid-card because it was just so mid.
To take two robots to the side from the most recent series of BattleBots, people will remember Tombstone, Blight Force, Witch Doctor, etc. Because holy damn, they cleaned house and kicked butt. The thing is that people will always still remember Captain Shredderator no matter how bad its win-loss ratio is, because it's got such a bad win-loss ratio. People will always remember Nelly, despite, her unfortunately lackluster appearance at last year's BattleBots, because we were a team there to entertain. People will always remember a Deitor or a Nemesis because they're there to entertain. I feel like this hit neither category. It was just a robot. It was just there. I'm ready to vote.
Yeah.
I'm good to vote.
I'm ready to vote.
I mean, I'm trying to think what the best analogy would be from the last series of BattleBots as to what this robot is.
Daisy Cutter?
No, I'd say
Daisy Cutter was so bad and so controversial that it's still
It was
vaguely
memorable,
remembered.
yeah.
I'll tell you what it's comparable to. Jasper.
Yeah, really good comparison. Like, a lot of things that you can say about both bots here is like, it had an interesting design. It didn't do fantastically in its fights, but unfortunately, because it hit such mid, it was not exactly the most memorable bot. And I feel really bad saying that about Jasper because I quite liked Jasper.
I would go Falcon. It's well engineered, well built, it's solid, it's just
vanilla,
uninteresting. The spinners don't really create any interesting hits. It doesn't really have any interesting wins to speak of or interesting losses. Just there.
It's the ready sorted crisps of robots.
God damn it.
And for some people, that's enough.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I don't think it's enough to take it to the arena.
And that's why I'll be putting it in the pit. Segway.
Segway. Yeah, it's very it's mid-tier, and it's not even a good reason to be mid-tier. It's mid-tier because it's mid-tier and it survived, and that was it. And that's a shame. I do genuinely think it was a shame for this robot. I feel like if Nightmare had been around maybe a series or two earlier, it might have done really well, because I kind of feel the original Nightmare, Spirit Nightmare, they fit earlier series more, and by the time it was series 4, it was just, you'd gone past that point.
I feel like there was potential there, but perhaps it was squandered. Who can really say why? But that it just never really lived up to what it could have been. Yeah, for that reason, I'm going to vote to put it in the pit.
I think, yeah, it's weird. Normally, when we're making a vote, I feel pretty strongly for putting it in the pit or putting it in the arena. But I actually feel pretty sad about putting this in the pit, because there's something there. It's just forgettable, and I am going to put it in the pit.
That's it. I don't think we can disagree with that as a result. It feels like I think one of the harder ones to go through at 0 and 3, though, because I feel like you could make a case for this going to the arena.
Yeah.
In a way.
I think a case could be made, and if any of our listeners want to make the case, there's a comment section, there's a Facebook page. Feel free to send us some arguments.
Hi there, ESC live chat. It's me, your girl. Fight me.
But it's like a unanimous judge's decision on a really close fight. People assume
Yeah.
because the judge's decision was unanimous that it was there was a very clear winner. Whereas what could
Here
have
we could
happened
have.
is that each judge had
I
very, very close points on
yeah.
a very close scorecard, but they all ultimately came to the same decision.
I feel like I could have completely hinged my argument on the uniqueness of that flipper design for both Raging Nightmare and Raging Reality, and how it was maybe not the most successful, but the uniqueness was an amazing point of it. There's no other flipper in that shape and design, really, is there?
Say
But I don't feel
it's
like there's a point because
I d-
it's just so bland.
I would say it's great to be doing something unique and something different if that something unique and different works.
Yeah, okay, that's
There's
fair.
no point pursuing a design and an idea that's not getting you anywhere.
This doesn't
Sure.
bode well for me, does it?
Talking of
Segue.
Mitch, would you like to bring your robot to the table?
For the last time,
Oh,
ladies, gentlemen,
Reira,
and
why
our
did
NB friends, it's time to let Mitch take to the table.
for the
Do you
last
have
time as
five?
host?
The last time as host,
Yeah.
we're looking forward to having you on as a guest at some point, Mitch. And I don't think we will survive, without your humour every now and again gracing our wonderful viewers' ears.
Yeah. You know what?
But that's
It's really weird. I'm actually feeling really nervous all of a sudden.
well, I mean, you've
You've got this, buddy.
You've been wanting to discuss this particular series of robots since we started the podcast.
And it's really weird because I look back now and go, why don't I do it at the start? But I think it's because we were holding off for maybe a different theme or two. So I was like, no, I'll bring Thermidor. I'll talk about
I
this
mean,
later.
we can lift the veil a little and say that we originally had an entire episode devoted to this one robot in the works.
Yes, we did.
Oh,
Dear.
so Mitch, for the last time as host, take it away, friend.
Has my time begun or do I get to introduce first?
Oliver?
Go for an introduction.
Okay, so a lot of people scratch their heads like I'm currently doing because my head is itchy. About this. A lot of people scratch their heads at this. At least Reira's laughing. I'm happy. Yeah, a lot of people scratch heads when I say this is my favorite robot because they don't understand why. But maybe after I talk about it today,
Goblin.
I think it's a very similar boat, and I think I'm not gonna.
Boat, is that the word you're going to use to describe this robot?
I mean, it's pretty similar to what napalm looks like, so you know.
It's weird. I could use a similar argument for what you did for Detonator and what you could have done for Napalm before I so cruelly ripped it from your grasp.
Heartless bastard.
That was still one of my best moments on this podcast. I am so proud of that. But yeah, I'm not going to go through. I will mention a similar argument, but that's not my driving force. I am bringing the lovable but slightly terrifying blue-faced robot that is known as Agrobot.
And your time starts now.
Oh dear. Agrobot is a very unique case in the fact that it wasn't spectacular, but it made a name for itself in probably the most shocking of ways. It beat Razor. I don't care what you say. I don't care, about technicalities, whatever. On the paper, in black and white, it says Agrobot technically beat Razor. Even though Razor perched itself on its tail thing, Agrabot somehow survived that match. Its career has kind of hinged on that. Jonathan Pierce, we mentioned him several times, and it's Jonathan Pierce's oh, this robot was capable of beating Razor. Okay, bullshit. Stop that shit. It survived. It survived that match due to its shape, which Razor had a really hard time clawing into. Razor was actually smaller than this robot when it was in Series 3. It got to the back, and that was where the damage was really done, and then Razor killed itself. But I feel like that moment was important, not just for Agrobot, but for both Razor and Robotics in general. That's a bit of a stretch, I will admit. But for Razor, it proved to be another chapter in the comeback story. I guess you could say that Inquisitor did it first, but Inquisitor never returned. It came for the pinball event, it failed to qualify for Series 3, but never returned after. Agrobot, on the other hand, would come back for Series 4, Series Extreme, first Series Extreme, Series 6, and Series 7, with, for the most part, different designs. It never had really meta weapons, it would go for different things. It had a Zonka for a tail several times, and then it went to a claw, and it had a lifting head and a bloody lifting pole thingy that lifted its entire body up. These weapons weren't the best, but I think it tried to be different and, went in different forms. I think the most notable moment I can think of, apart from the Agrabot Razor fight, was the Mayhem, where Agrabot actually flipped over Splinter. Now, granted, Agrabot got stuck after that, but then Dead Metal flipped Splinter back over, which really pissed me off. Kilotron should have won that. I thought Agrabot survived a bit longer, but nah, Kilotron deserved that mayhem, and Agrabot proved it could do something there. It did break down a fair amount. It broke down against Smidsy and Blade, but by the time of Series 7, it was actually bulkier and could actually last a fight. In the qualifiers, I think it got knocked out by Saros, but it still qualified, whereas in the actual main series, it
I'm
was
gonna
against...
encourage you to wrap it up.
in the main series, it actually survived Ripper and Reptron, and there you go, that's all I can say. There, bye.
I did not pit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Ian.
Oh dear.
I have been wanting to talk about Agrobot for a while as well.
Oh no.
I really love this robot's variance. The fact that this robot, every single time it appeared, looked different in some way. And I have to give them that. I have to give them a huge point in the, towards the arena for the fact that they didn't take a failed season and go, well, if we just make slight improvements, I feel it will be better. They essentially took every season as a, right, boys, back to the drawing board, throw it all in the bin. And they even admitted it themselves. Every Agrabot was entirely different. And I love that. I genuinely really love that. However, the Series 7 version of Agrabot, Mitch,
Yes.
Series 7, can you think up some effective robots from Series 7 for me quickly?
Well,
Throw a few out there.
the meta at that point was mainly flippers. Spinners was starting to come into effect. So let's see, Typhoon had won the series. We had Storm. We had Exterminator, which changed with Vertical Spinner. We had hang on a minute. We had Firestorm still in effect.
But yeah, so big flips and big hits. So clippy clip claws at the back that take forever to close. Do you think that would be an effective weapon?
I'm gonna bring up the fact that this is also the series of scary go round, of shell shock. We're not exactly talking
Sure.
the cream of the crop in every heat in Series 7.
Okay, fine, I'll have a shoot down my 1
Okay,
point.
I will just say that I will agree with you. I don't get the claws. Like, the claws looked good. They had a cool design,
Oh, they look awesome.
but they didn't really do much.
Badass.
Why
But
would you get rid of the claws when you have the mighty Zonka? Jonathan Pierce called it a crossbow, and for that reason alone, I am immediately in love.
Sure. But in season 6, I feel they were so close. That lifting arm on a low cut wedge is so close to the meta. And then in season 7, rather than diving further into the meta hole, they found the other side of the arena, in which a hole exists to the realm of madness.
A hole called the Pit, Reira.
Oh
I
dear.
have, I have to give them some credit. Again, uniqueness is something that I really love and cherish in this sport. But come on, like I can't do anything here without wanting to bring up some of the failures of its design. But also, it just always looked so cool, and it beat
I
Razor.
want.
I think it was a robot that was there to partially to entertain.
hit-
I mean, series 4, I think was probably its most impressive variation. And the only reason that it lost to Smidsy was that was a slightly more optimized version of the same
Even
design.
if it wasn't
But by the time you get to Series 7, I think they've embraced the entertainment
I was gonna say,
aspect
even if it
full force, and they come wearing leather spikes.
even
Like
if
it
it
is,
wasn't an
great.
intention,
I have to start asking if I'm watching Robot Wars or if I'm in Jonathan Pierce's sex
Oh,
dungeon.
So even if it wasn't an intention, we quite often mention, and we've even mentioned previously today, that there are these sort of two ends of this wonderful spectrum of robot combat, where you can sit at the end of the spectrum where you are there to purely entertain. You are a Dietor, you are a Nelly, and you can then go all the way throughout this spectrum, all the way to the sort of grey middle area like Nightmare sat in, all the way up to the hyper competitive, I'm here to win and nothing else, your Hypnodiscs, your Tombstones, your Minotaurs. And then you have Agrobot. And I feel that the issue we have with Agrobot is each version of the damn bot sits at a different part of the fucking spectrum. You've got season 7 that is very clearly at this point like mid to low grey area. You've got season 6 that was so close to the competitive end of the spectrum. And then you have the season 3 version that if it wasn't there to entertain, it at least did that job.
I'm gonna disagree with that,
Really?
Reira, because the reason that it survived Razor was because the fact it was 90%
Yeah,
air.
but that's not an intent. Okay, sure. But you know what other robots were 90% air? Oh god, I can't remember its name. Oh no, the one with the wooden armor that had like waves on the side. We can cut this bit.
Oh no, this is gonna stay in.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I also don't know what you're
You-
talking about. You're gonna have to go and do
It
some
used
wiki
another
hunting.
robot's internals, and it was like the smallest amount of internals to the biggest amount of air on the outside. We've discussed it before.
Hard?
No,
I don't know. No, it wasn't hard. I
early
don't know.
season. I'll do some digging. You two continue to fight.
Okay. Oh
Rah!
no! Please don't hit me. You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses.
I am a guy with glasses.
Oh, okay. You'd hit the guy with the glasses. Got you. Right. So I did just remember I was making a point and then I deviated from it. So if I were permitted to finish that, I would be very appreciative of you. Thank you.
No.
Okay. Sorry.
No, go on.
So I mentioned that the Razor defeat was actually quite important. I mentioned that if Inquisitor had, still been competing, I think it would have gone more to Inquisitor. But because it never went there, Agrabot kind of took that chapter, went, right, yeah, this is fine. I beat you, even though it's by technicality. Ha! Jonathan Pierce ran with it. But it's not just important for Agrabot and Razor, but I feel it's important to Robotics as well. Because, we hear it in BattleBots nowadays. Anything can happen in BattleBots. But I feel like this was one of the earlier cases of
Anything
that
can happen
happening.
in the next half hour.
Damn it, you beat me to it.
So, okay. To be fair, on paper, Razor would absolutely muller Agrabot, even if it was hard to get into. If they'd survived to the end of that match, Razor would have won. But it didn't. It broke down. Again, second time in a row. And then it'd break down again in Series 4 against Pussycat, because Pussycat was fucking ripping it to shreds. And then by the time it got to Series 5, that story that had been built up for Razor, the 3 losses, the 2 losses that shouldn't have happened, technically, Inquisitor and Agrabot, and then Pussycat actually doing some work, it actually builds up an impressive. What's the word I'm after? Like, you kind of get the feeling that Razor should have won by that point, but it just didn't because it had issues. And then it gets to Series 5, it has the run, it has the match against Bigger Brother in the final, it wins. And, on the other side of that, Bigger Brother had such a fucking run that series as well. Jesus, it beat Hypnodisc, and it should have beat Hypnodisc, but it survived. And I feel like Agrabot played a part in that story. As much as it was like, oh, I survived, anything can happen, it was probably one of the earlier cases. Like, it all comes back in a circle. I would give that to Inquisitor if Inquisitor was still competing. I'd still give it to Inquisitor if we brought it to the table, as much as Inquisitor was in one series and a side event and that's it. But I feel Agrabot has more to it.
You know what, Mitch? I completely agree with you. I think that the fact that Robotics can be so unpredictable is one of the things that makes it so interesting and exciting to watch. As much as I support all the sort of fantasy Robot Wars tournaments and things that go on, ultimately you need to introduce an element of unpredictability because you're never going to call that, Scorpius is going to be Ice Wave or Hypnodisc is going to lose to Bigger Brother. And I think that it was an important lesson to the Razor team to swallow their hubris, work on improving the robot, and end up creating one of the greatest machines in the history of the sport and giving us some of the best semi-final and final fights of a Robot Wars series.
I will just also say that when I was thinking about this, because I know we've been trying to do this episode for a while now, I've been putting so much effort into this kind of argument. I've been thinking about it in my day-to-day. I'm like, right, how am I going to present this? But I actually went to that fantasy side. I was like, okay, let's say Razor beat Inquisitor. Razor didn't have wings at that point. It's very possible Behemoth could have beat it. And to be fair, imagine that win for Behemoth at that point. That would have been fucking huge, and that would have added a massive thing to its legacy. But it didn't.
I will bring up the Behemoth fight against Razor in the World Championships. I believe it was the first World Championship one. Certainly one of them that I think it was robbed. It went to a judge's decision, and I think Behemoth should have won it. If Razor didn't have the wings, yeah, that would have changed things in quite a big way.
I found the robot I was talking
Anyway,
about.
go on, Reira.
We brought it up on our Halloween special. We
Oh.
spoke about it because it was the same team from Banshee. I'm
Oh,
talking
Shark
about
Attack.
Shark Attack.
Oh dear.
That robot was
There is one
entirely
thing-
bloody air.
It was.
But that robot didn't beat.
But that's what I'm
Reira.
saying.
That
I'm saying
that robot was flipped over immediately
I'm
by
saying
Behemoth.
that's my point. My point entirely was being filled with air is not necessarily a competitive choice.
I mean, look at the amount of Chaos 2 and Razor clones. Just copying the champions isn't necessarily a competitive choice, but it did bring about several successful series of robots.
Ming 3.
I mean, I was thinking more Tiberius, but
Ming
Right.
3.
But
we will
seriously,
talk about Ming 3 one day.
No, we fucking
got-
won't.
I've got-
I fucking refuse.
Oh, yes, we will. I'm going to bring Ming 3 one
Can we
day.
talk about Series 7 Ming that was to fucking drill?
no, we will not. We will not talk about that.
It
Absolutely
was
not.
an
Out of this house. I'm
angry
kicking
drill.
out of my
This
house.
isn't your house anymore, Mitch.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, you've already been signed off the lease, mate.
You chose to
sorry.
move out.
All right, Jesus. But guys, I can't believe this. We forgot to talk about something really fucking important about this
Okay,
robot.
go on.
The face. We haven't talked about the
Okay,
face.
no, I have to give you that.
I'm being unbiased as fuck here. As much as I love this robot, in my opinion, has one of the most iconic and most intimidating faces of a robot. And I'm putting that along the lines of Mauler. I'd say, in a way, Chronic. There was another robot, and I can't think what it fucking was, and that's going to piss me off. Damn it.
Thermidor?
Kind of. No, not really. I mean, Thermidor that's a bit of a mixed one. Chronic looked more, I don't know. Chronic is kind of in the middle as well, but more so. Looks more kind of, I'm going to flip you. Whereas Thermidor just looks like it's screaming because it's been burnt, which is why it's bright red.
It's definitely one of the more impressive paint jobs on a robot, and I'm so glad that Team Archie are painting their robots in a similar paint scheme going
Yes,
into
It looks
2020.
stale.
Yes.
They are basically, the new Hydra is basically the continuation of Agrabot.
I did see that, and that was my first thought as well.
I didn't realise it at first, and it's almost like, hey Mitch, look, Hydra's looking like Agrabot. I'm like, oh yeah, I really like that. I have admitted that Agrabot's matches have not been impressive. I'm gonna give you the negative side as well. Like the Binky fight, it put holes in Binky. I'll give it that much, but it was so fucking cumbersome and looked like it'd been having a bit of oil with Shunt before the match started. You know, the
It was their first build.
Yeah.
And the fact that a pneumatic spike actually caused damage is points in the robot's favor. You know, they were new to robotics, and everyone at that point was just trialing and
Yeah.
seeing what would happen. And the fact that their weapon did
Yeah.
damage, I think is I will not hold the way that fight went against Agrabot.
So the matches it's had haven't been incredibly impressive. It died in one hit to Vader in Series 6, which, ouch. That was such a massive hit as well. I felt bad for Agrabot. But the only other 2 points I want to make is that if Agrabot had qualified for Series 5, it would have had a tenure in the Robot Wars franchise as long as mid-season.
Yeah.
Technically, if you want to count Extreme, because Extreme Series 5 were happening at the same time, fair enough, but I'm kind of going by main series here. And I feel that's a shame, but I found out the robot that Agrabot lost to, and it's nothing to be sniffed at. It lost to Barbara.
Okay, sure.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I read this.
Apparently, Agrabot had been fitted with titanium armor, and they were like, oh, we've got titanium armor now, well, hey. Tiberius apparently ripped a massive gash in it, and apparently one of the Agrabot guys looked like he wanted to cry.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yes!
If you've gone, I've brought
I just find
the
it funny.
best armor ever, and then you go into a fight and it gets absolutely ripped off, and you're just like, like, so one of the things I'm looking into for a future beta weight, of course, with Holy Diver, is I'm trying to, within a theme, recreate Bite Force. I want that sort of reliability that Bite Force has too, which means I've had to look at different types of armor. If I waltzed in there with the most expensive armor I could buy for that bot, you know, being Hardox, essentially at beetle weight, went up against a robot and it tore a huge hole in the side of my armor, I'd feel the fucking same. I'd want to go and sit in a corner for a little while and debate life.
And the fact that it's up against Barbarous, which is no slouch of a robot, that's a very impressive robot.
I think this was like early Barbarous as well, so it had the kind of weird wheels that like it had the wheels, and it had like the kind of front stabilizing wheels, which were really weird. But I do remember it hitting decently in Series 5 as well. Maybe my memories, you know.
Let's compare this to another robot that we've discussed today that didn't get into Series 5, Spirit of Nightmare. The reason that didn't get in is because it was barely working. It went into an arena against a barely working Chompalot,
Oh god.
and the producers said no to both of them. Whereas this, Agrabot didn't get in because it was sorely bested by a very powerful spinner.
And that was the only series it failed to qualify
Imagine
for.
being in a qualifying match that neither person qualifies in.
There's actually quite a few of those,
Yeah,
if I
there
remember
have been.
correctly.
Yeah?
Last thing I will say, we brought it up earlier, the biker gear. I think they started it in Extreme, and then by Series 7, it was proper like leather jackets, bandanas. And it's just like, if I ever make a robot, if it's a beta weight or whatever, I am getting biker gear like that. I'm going to get badges and shit, and I am going to wear that to the event with my robot, and I'm going to feel so badass. And yes,
Mitch, you are
it's a
always
big
a
inspiration.
badass.
Stop it, you. But yeah, this robot is a massive inspiration to me and my creativity. You know, it's robots like Agrabot. Agrabot started it, Warhog, stuff like that. But Agrabot is the one. No, it was the first robot with a face I saw. I was like, I like this a lot. I was a very happy young man when I saw this robot, and I draw pictures of it and be like, "Mummy, Nanny, look at this. I drew this. I like this robot a lot." I can't remember its name, but there you go. So yeah, it holds a dear place in my heart. And
Again, it's
yeah, I
that
think I'm ready
similar
to.
story to similar vein to me in Detonator, where it's just a robot that's
Yep.
sort of sat with you for so long. However, I feel like I don't know why, but I feel like the voting might go the opposite as to how it went with my precious child. Because honestly, I'm struggling to find reasons to put this in the pit besides a few lackluster performances that can easily be signed off. And the fact that, you know, maybe compared to other robots, it's not still going and it doesn't have a stellar performance record. But the thing is that that's me picking holes. And I know that's what we're supposed to do. But when I feel like I'm picking holes, I don't want to do it anymore. Whereas with the Nightmare series, I didn't feel like I was picking holes. I felt like I was just being brutally honest. With Agrabot, if I'd say things like it didn't exactly have the most effective weapon systems at any point, I feel like that's picking a hole because it's still performed well and it's still entertained. And I feel that's because we've hit that thing of the fact that a lot of the Agrabot robots are on that end of the spectrum that are entertainment.
I mean, to be fair to you, Reira, if Napalm had been in Agrabot's position and had survived Razor, I think that would have been a massive thing for Napalm. It would have been a massive thing for any
Yeah.
robot.
The thing is, that sort of thing sticks with you. If Nelly had turned up to season 4
Yeah.
and beaten Tombstone, even if we'd, then lost every other fight, that's the thing. When you put up against a legend and you win, doesn't matter if you're the worst robot in the universe, you'll always be remembered as they beat that robot. And I think that Agrabot, has well and truly earned its title.
And Mitch is right to say, JP often sort of took one thing that the robot did in its early appearances and brought it up again and again and again and again. Thermidor 2, it was, it flipped out 2 robots in Extreme 1. With Behemoth, it was a former semi-finalist. And with this robot, it was,
never a finalist.
it beat Razor.
And that's its icon. That's its moment. And I think, to be very blunt, I think that deserves it a place in our arena. Hey, it beat Razor.
I think it also deserves an arena place, but not just because it beat Razor. It's like the one-hit wonder of a band that otherwise does really solid stuff. Everybody knows the one song, but they don't look beneath the surface. And I think beneath the surface of Agrabot is a very competently built machine, a potentially competitive machine when it was the 20th seed in Series 4, and a machine built to entertain by the time we reached Series 7. It was always looking fantastic. It is one of those robots that you would just want to draw as a young child, as Mitch said. And I think it embodies the period of Robot Wars in which it came from, and I cannot say enough good things about this. Viva la Agrolution. It goes to
Viva la
the arena.
Agrolution, indeed. Mitch?
The birth of my creativity, with thanks to my mother and Nan, I am putting this into the arena, happily content with it being 3-0.
It did it. Mitch, you finally brought it to the table, and look how it did.
I'm actually quite surprised it did so well.
Well, I mean, what a legacy. So, to summarize, so far this episode, we have brought King Buxton, which went to the arena 3-0, the Nightmare series, which went to the pit 0-3, and Agrabot, which went to the arena 3-0.
Before we do anything else, I'm going to be really cheeky
Uh-oh.
now. I've been thinking about this, and I want to do something a bit early.
Uh-oh.
With permission. You can happily edit this out if need be.
I'm scared.
So, when we had the end of year special and we took robots from suggestions and we looked at whether they were in the right place or not, I want to bring a robot that it was between us three anyway, and I'm not happy with where it's at. Will you hear your old pal
I
Mitch
think,
out?
yeah, do you know what? We have to give him this, Oliver. Let's hear him out.
I mean, it depends on the robot. All right, okay. Listeners of ESC, prepare, strap in for another massive tangent. We are going to discuss a robot that we've already condemned or
Oliver.
praised. Mitch,
Oliver,
what you got? You got 3
Change it
minutes.
change to red alert. I know that involves changing the bulb.
Okay.
You got 3 minutes, Mitch.
Oh, I've got
What's up?
I've got a timer.
Well,
Wait,
you've,
oh dear.
Yeah,
you've
you are.
brought a
Your
fourth
time
robot to the
starts.
episode. Go.
Right. I'm going to be very blunt with this. As much as it wasn't a perfect 3-0, I don't think the stag deserves the arena. It was a load of donkey shit. It was terrible. I hate this robot. We've talked about this several times about, how me and you don't have a robot we hate, but as ESC's gone along, I've thought about this one moment in this episode. I've gone, I really hate this robot. I can't believe it's in the arena. I am literally grasping at my face going, oh God, the horror of this robot with eyes, but it's a failure to all robots with faces. It didn't do much, Oliver. It was terrible. And I think we were basing it more off what it could have been, which, don't get me wrong, we did an episode on that, but 259H had potential because 259 was actually good. And the concepts of this were it was okay concepts, but the stag was just terrible in comparison.
I never thought that this would be how you decide to, sign yourself off of ESC, man.
Listen, I have been dwelling
You're
on this.
going
I've
out
been
in
like,
anger.
do I... Don't look back in anger. I heard you say.
Mitch, there are robots I genuinely do hate. Watch out, listeners of ESC, for a future episode where I will bring a kill. But
Oh, God.
the stag is not one of them. It's so cute. It's so beautifully designed, and it's so madcap, and the wonderful hat that the driver wears with the flashing bulbs and the spinny satellite dish. It's the kind of entertaining one-hit wonder teams that shows up for a single fight, and it makes the character of what Robot Wars is a team that's not there to win, but a team that's there to
Can someone
entertain.
remind me, what episode we brought it on? And
Episode 2.
okay, which was Obscure Robots, right?
Obscure Robots.
Can someone remind me how we voted?
2-1. I went to Pit, and I think you two went to the arena.
So, Mitch, you're clearly not going to change Oliver's
Yes.
opinion here.
No.
So don't worry, Oliver. That's fine.
Don't do this.
You have,
Don't do this,
you have
Reira.
to sway me.
Okay.
Why do I need to change my vote?
Right.
Why should I?
Okay.
From that episode, I put the stag in the arena, and I was happy with that. I've never regretted that choice. Make me regret it, Mitch.
This was honestly, apart from actually, wait, I don't even think I have a thing I can compare this to. This was probably my biggest defeat on ESC. I was horrified that we let this abomination into the arena.
Fucking
First of all, this thing's not cute in the slightest. If this was a real life bug, I would squash it. That's how much I.
Okay, but you're telling me your opinion.
Okay,
Why
I will.
should
I will
change
give you.
mine.
Okay, so this robot, as much as it was different, I'm going to bring up. As much as Agrabot competed more, let's talk about Agrabot, shall we? We're talking about robots. Yes. We're talking about robots with weapons that were different, and with Spirit Nightmare, when it first was Spirit of Nightmare, had all these weird weapons and they all put on. It's like, okay, well, only one of them really does anything, And then Agrabot's got all these kind of madcap things that, granted, the spike worked, the lifting pole thing in Extreme worked because it flipped over Splinter and it should have been immobilized. The stag had claws, and okay, there's some robots with claws that have done well. We mentioned Can Opener. Can Opener didn't do well in main series, but in Annihilator, it won 2 of them. The stag, I feel like the hat that the guy wore on Team Budget was probably the most impressive thing about this robot. It was like, you have the technology to do that with the hat, and okay, claws more in depth to doing, but it just didn't do much with the robot. It got pitted, it didn't do much, and then
Mitch.
What?
What are your thoughts on the robot Infinity?
Don't really remember Infinity. I remember its claws being bent.
We are
and that
bringing up
was-
so many damn other robots on this episode. I am getting very
Yeah, we are.
confused.
See,
I've opened up
I
a
would.
can of worms.
The can opener.
Hey.
The robot Infinity.
Yes.
Yes, the claws got bent. I think the more the idea with that, and I would argue the idea with the stag, is that it's just aiming to be wide to control robots around. And it was fairly effective at doing that, despite the fact that the claws were not especially great. And yeah, I don't think you can hold the stag to try and be a competitive, effective robot. It's there to be to be full of character. It's there to be. It knows it's going out in round one, and it embraces that unashamedly by being memorable, by being cute.
Didn't we talk about this robot being we don't know where it goes? Because you're at one end of the spectrum, it's got claws and it's got all this technological stuff. But at the same time, it's not a serious contender and it's meant to go out in the first round or whatever. But that's the thing. I feel like we're doing robots that enter as joke bots or gimmick bots, whatever how you want to call them, because I feel we're doing them dirty by saying this is one of them, because I don't feel it is.
When the team captain has a hat like that, you're going to tell me he was there to be serious.
Okay, I'm gonna wind us down here because this is a fourth robot. We've gone. This is going to be a long ass episode, and as much as that's a good thing, because there's some stuff that I want to say at the end here too. After we've done this, I am
And me.
going to I'm going to rescind my vote from the stag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that vote, going to pull the pin out of the little Reira sent this to the arena, and I'm going to side with Mitch. Hear me out, Oliver. Hear me out. Mitch makes some very valid points about the fact that yes, this robot was cute, and I think you may have swayed me with its cuteness. But something that I have learned since we've been doing ESC is that episodes feel better afterwards when we stick to the theme of the episode to judge it. The case in point being Warrior Dragon, or can't remember the other name that it has, but you know what I mean. Honestly
Yes.
think that the only talking point we had on that episode was obscure. It had to be a robot that was obscure.
Yes.
I'd agree that the stag is obscure, and I'd agree that's for a reason. And I think that reason means that it should go in the pit.
Oh, I'm confused. Hang on.
I am also confused. So you're saying it fits the theme perfectly?
That doesn't mean
You
that
like
doesn't
how
mean it goes
You
into the
agree with my
arena.
point?
I assessed it within the theme.
I'm confused. So
Okay,
it's
wait,
So it's successfully met the
yeah, but
criteria for
we
the
didn't
theme.
vote on Centurion because we have agreed that this is obscure. We can't deny it being obscure because all the three robots we bought were obscure. If that was the one voting point, then we'd throw everything into the arena.
Then I don't understand what point you're
I'm
trying
saying
to
there's
make.
a reason it's obscure, and that reason is it was an ineffective robot. The reason Centurion was obscure was because it didn't get enough airtime.
the reason Warhog was obscure was because it was powerful but broke down.
Exactly. I feel like the stag was. I don't think the stag is arena worthy. I'm changing my vote.
Can I hold up a ballot that says victory? Yeah. I'm so happy. You have.
I feel I'm going to pay.
you have
I
healed
feel
my
I'm going to pay
Right,
for this.
scrap
I feel I'm
that.
going to pay for that in future episodes.
Mitch, I would firstly, Mitch, I would like you to edit Agrabot to 2 and 1.
Oh no, you can't. Oh, that's
If we're allowed to change our vote, then
open
that's going to be
we
step
opened the
1.
votes- We opened the votes on changing votes very specific occasions, and we agreed for Mitch's extra robot here. We have not agreed to reopen the votes for Agrobot. And I feel that you're doing it out of spite, and that's not fair.
Yes, I am doing it
You're
out
not
of
allowed
spite.
to do that.
But you are allowed to say that a robot fits a theme and therefore should go into
Yes,
pit.
I
Reira,
am.
this is very
No,
inconsistent.
it's not.
I get what
Someone
Reira's
has
saying.
to understand
Like,
my
okay,
brain talk here.
Okay, let me try and explain it. So basically,
I don't think we need to at this point, Mitch. I think it's happened, and I'm not going to accept it, no matter how much you try and explain
I'm
it.
gonna
to me.
change you to the
I feel
grumpy dog at this
wounded.
point.
Yes, you have. Right. Okay. So to wrap up this episode,
Oh
ladies
my
and gentlemen,
god! Don't end on such
You
a
may be
sour
wondering.
note.
you may be wondering what is going to happen to ESC going forward with Mitch moving on.
Yeah.
We have some ideas. We have
do.
some hosts that we would like to try out and see how things are going to go. So the next episode of ESC, when we get round to recording it, because we may take a bit of a break to work out how things are going to
And
go
we've
from
got some
here.
editing to from time of recording. We've got some editing to do. So this episode will probably come out way after it's been recorded. I mean, to timestamp here, we're recording this on the 20th.
27th of
I mean,
April.
26th. We started on the 26th. It's past,
That's very true.
we recorded past midnight as usual. But we started this on the 26th of April 2020. I will be surprised if this gets out before June, July.
Fair enough. Well, I'm gonna say that the next episode we record will be a game show style parody to test out the people we have in mind to take on the role of the next regular host of the podcast. We'll see how we gel and how they. We'll see what the vibe is and how well we get on as podcasters. And we will also be involving you in the decision. We would like your feedback on that episode, see who you like and who you would like to see step up to the ESC plate. And then going forward, we will have a new regular host. And if this keeps up with your retroactive revoting, you might have 2 new hosts.
If I'm the only
dear.
surviving member of ESC, I'm renaming it the DGS podcast and making it about death metal.
I support
Today's episode, ladies
Oh.
and gentlemen, is about how pretty napalm is.
this.
And wrapping up the episode for today, Mitchell,
I don't think.
do you have any
I
closing
don't
words?
think ESC
Well,
would be the same without Mitch.
Well, I feel like I've just ruined that. I didn't even mean to. Oh God. Closing words. I'm not very good with this.
Speech.
Oh no. I should have had a speech prepared. I didn't think about this. I wasn't expecting to have a speech.
Come on, Mitch. Speech for us.
For fuck's sake. Okay. Look, I'm not much good at big speeches, and I know I haven't always been an easy guy to get on with. And I know that, given the choice, I probably wouldn't have chosen you as friends. But I just want to say that over the years, I come to regard you as people I met. I was told to do that.
Fuck you, Rimmer.
Yeah, this is a weird moment. I feel more nervous than I was when I was talking about Agrabot. That's not the nicest thing to do. I did feel bad about, quitting, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. And the thing I've learned over the last few months is that you got to look out for yourself,
Agreed.
and people will look out for you. I'm not saying people won't, because oh god, these two have been two of the biggest role models and support acts that a guy could ask for. I'd also like to give some big thank yous to Charlie Hubbard, Sean Goodliff, aka Dominus Ignis, Sam Elliott. There's quite a few of people who have been really supportive, really helpful during the last few months. But yeah, I'm doing it for the right reason. I'm not out of this. I'm still, as Reira would call it, I'm an executive.
You're becoming the Vince McMahon of our podcast.
Does this mean I can fire Oliver for besmirching Agrabot with a negative point?
Technically, yeah.
Oliver, you're fired.
If you'd like to apply to join ESC, please write to us.
How is Reira the only one left? 1, 2, 3, please help, Street.
But yes, in all seriousness, I'm not out. I've got plans for this. I've got plans for outside.
We've got
as
plans to keep you involved as well. Just for the discerning fan, Mitch will always be here. Mitch is essentially just taking a step back from being a host, and I think that we are saddened by this. It's going to take a while to recover, hence us talking about taking a break. But at the same time, this is new territory for ESC, and we're not losing Mitch. We shouldn't see this as losing Mitch. We're essentially supporting Mitch. And I mean, the ESC podcast will always be Oliver, Mitch, and Reira. And there will be another name in that suit. And they will hopefully, become as much of an integral part of the podcast as Mitch has been. But we will never take away what Mitch has been for us. The ESC podcast without Mitch will be different and difficult, but it won't be dead. We will continue. And I just want to personally, from the bottom of my heart, thank Mitch for every single wonderful moment he has caused on this podcast, both behind the scenes and in front of the mic. From absolutely wrecking me by picking Napalm on the Axe episode, all the way back to absolutely iconic classic lines such as "It really tickles the pit," which I have to bring up. And being a powerhouse of editing for us, it's been a journey, and I couldn't have wished it to be anyone else, Mitch. And I wish you the absolute best on your journeys outside of ESC.
Oh, I totally agree. I echo all of those words and more. Mate, you've been an integral part of creating ESC in the first place, making it what it is and defining its identity. And without you, this podcast wouldn't be where it is today. And never underestimate. I know you've said to me you feel like you've just been doing the editing and that you've not really put in as much work. We've never seen
Not
it like
at all.
that. We've seen you as an equal, if not putting in more work than the rest of us to make this podcast what it is. Mate, we're gonna miss you so much, but we support you in any decision that you've made and anything that you do because it's important.
You'll always be a part of ESC, Mitch. And
I'm going to encourage any listeners now, if they're planning to stick around after the episode, because I'm going to work on a bit of a Mitchell tribute. He doesn't know this.
God's sake.
we've been looking into
Just to
compiling
sum up some
clips.
of the best bits that you've
Yeah.
done in this podcast, mate.
And I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. Honestly, like, no matter what, you'll always be family, Mitch. And that's what we're doing. Family looks out for each other. And you needed this. You needed the step back. And whoever it is that fills your shoes has a damn big job to fill them.
Damn big job for a small person. Yeah, as I've stated, these two they've been powerhouses in their own right, not just with ESC, but in terms of personal stuff. The whole Rimmer speech about maybe not picking these two people as my friends, maybe that rings true, but I'm glad I
Thank
did,
you.
because they're probably two of the best friends I've had.
Mitch, you're moving on from ESC, but if people want to keep up with
Where can
everything
they
that you're
find
doing
you?
going forward, where can they find you? For the last time.
I will be on the Orc Corp still, YouTube and Twitch. I've actually been streaming more recently due to quarantine, which has actually been cool because I've had more people
Yeah.
watching me, which is nice. And they've been complimenting me too, and it feels like my confidence is slowly building up. Apart from that, I'm on Instagram with Scribblork. I have big plans. I said this for a while now, but I've actually been working on them. I'm very excited to unveil what I've got in store
And we
soon.
look forward to seeing it as well.
For the last time, our Insta when.
Insta when.
Dear.
And in the meantime, keep up to date with ESC. We're not going away. We're just changing our face a little bit. We have some new plans to polish up
It will be a very different ESC
the format,
going forward.
but not necessarily
No,
different in a bad way.
We're growing.
And we hope different in a way
We're
that you can
growing.
continue to enjoy.
We're growing from tragedy, as it were. We
Believe me, I'll keep new team in mind. Don't you worry. I'll make sure I do.
yeah,
Or
I
else you're
mean,
fired.
he has that power now, Oliver. It's true.
I have that power. But yeah, these guys, I'm not gonna make. No, I'm not gonna make sure. Shit, no, that's the wrong line entirely.
staying
Cut
in.
that bit.
That's the
I'm
new
gonna
audio
make sure.
cut.
I'm
It's
gonna
staying in.
make sure. Oh, shit. I'm gonna make sure that these three, well, whoever takes my role, and especially these two as well, I'm gonna make sure everything's okay and they don't feel pressured, because that's the exact same treatment I got. And out of everything I've done in terms of projects and stuff, there's normally a lot of pressure. There's normally a lot of well, shit, if you don't do it, well, wow, you're a terrible person. But these two have very kindly listened and supported more than I can say a lot of people have. And I think the world needs more of that. Needs more support at the minute with how things are. But yeah, these three, whatever the third person is, yeah, I'm speaking in terms of future sense. They don't know what I've got in store. I've got evil
We
schemes.
look forward to this.
I've got it. You've given me the power now. You can't take it back. I am going to do evil things with episodes.
All right. So until next time, guys.
You can
We've been
find
your
me and
hosts.
Oliver on places as well. I'm on Twitter, and I'm on the Nelly the Ellybot page, and I'm on a lot of Facebook stuff. And you can also hear me on Behind the Bot on their podcast they did with me. Look forward to an episode where we invite them over sometime soon. We're gonna have fun with that. I've devised my own little format for that episode.
So you can find me on Facebook, Team Mott and Bailey, as always, and I encourage you to sub to the podcast. Keep in the loop. We will be back, and maybe I'm not going to say we'll be better than ever, but we're gonna grow and we're gonna move and
ESC
we're
has
gonna
always
do
been
something
better
different.
than ever.
We're gonna miss you, Mitch.
Well, I will end on this note. Excuse me, listeners, you'd best support these two people and their pages and all that good stuff, or else I'm going to have to break some kneecaps, and I really don't want to do that. I may be small, but I will do it. And I have baseball bats. I have
Oliver, hold him
medieval
back.
weapons that I stole from
Oliver, hold him back.
I would
Oh,
be
he's
back.
executive producer now. I can't do that.
I would
Oh,
be
he's
back.
executive producer now. I can't do that.
Oh yeah, shit, great, fantastic. So yes, please support. As like I will still be here, but please, as a final wish, as a main host, as it were, please support my friends as much as they've supported me.
And I suppose for the last time, I've been Reira.
I've been Oliver.
And for the last time as host, I've been Mitch. Thank you very much for listening to ESC, and we'll see you the next time we have an episode uploaded. I just hit
That's
my
staying
hand.
in.
Ow.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
That's definitely
Ow.
staying in.